Have you ever stopped to think that maybe you're not making the wrong decisions with money, but decisions that are too normal? The kind everyone makes, that no one questions, that seem safe, responsible, and even intelligent. And that's precisely why they go unnoticed. If this has ever crossed your mind, stick with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than you imagine. There's a silent trap in the world of personal finance that almost everyone accepts without realizing it. It doesn't appear as a glaring mistake, it doesn't come with immediate guilt, and it doesn't generate an obvious financial impact at first. On the contrary, it disguises itself as common sense, maturity, adult life. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Nobody teaches you this game, but everyone plays it. Most people believe that financial problems arise from poor choices, impulsiveness, or lack of control. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. What impoverishes ordinary people, most of the time, is not wrong decisions. It's socially accepted decisions, repeated year after year without reflection, working longer hours, raising the standard of living whenever income increases, postponing important decisions until there's money left over, seeking immediate security even if it costs the future. Have you ever experienced this? The problem isn't making a bad spending decision once. We all make mistakes. The real problem is repeating too many. Normal choices that seem harmless in isolation, but which, added up over time, silently drain any chance of financial growth. That's how the invisible game works. It doesn't knock you down all at once. It keeps you going in circles, convinced that you're making progress. And the most curious thing is that this has nothing to do with intelligence, effort, or character. Responsible, organized, and hard-working people also fall into this trap. Because the game isn't obvious. It happens in the realm of psychology and financial behavior, where the brain seeks comfort, social approval, and immediate rewards. Meanwhile, the future is being negotiated in small installments that no one notices. Perhaps you're doing everything right in the eyes of others, and yet you feel like money never works in your favor, as if you're always too busy paying for the present to build tomorrow. If this feeling has bothered you at any point, pay attention. This isn't bad luck, nor is it misfortune. It's the accumulated effect of overly ordinary decisions within a system that wasn't designed to explain the rules to you. The invisible game doesn't obviously separate rich people from poor people. It separates those who question from those who merely repeat. And from the moment you begin to see this pattern, something changes. Not because everything is resolved overnight, but because you begin to realize that some seemingly small choices have a much greater weight than they appear. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding this trap is only the first step in seeing why so many intelligent people remain financially trapped, even when doing everything the right way. And as you listen to this, perhaps some situations will begin to fit into your own story. Small decisions that you never called mistakes, but that today seem to have weighed more than they should have. And this isn't meant to generate guilt. Quite the opposite. It's meant to generate awareness. Because when we realize that we weren't failing, but rather following a script that no one explained, something inside eases. It even makes you want to say, "So, it wasn't just me." If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has resonated with you the most so far. It could be a decision you realize you've been repeating, a feeling this topic has stirred, or even a question you've always kept to yourself. The comments here aren't just numbers. They become real conversations, exchanges of experiences between people trying to better understand this invisible game. And often, someone reading what you write realizes they're not alone. And if at any point you thought, this needed to be said, liking the video is a simple way to signal that. It seems small, but it helps the content reach more people who are also stuck in these overly normal choices without even realizing it. That's how this message gains strength. Not because it promises miracles, but because it provokes reflection. Now, if you feel that this type of conversation is missing, direct, honest, without magic formulas, subscribing to the channel is almost like saying, I want to continue learning to better understand my own decisions. This channel grows precisely when people who think this way decide to stay, follow along, and question together. Your participation here is what keeps this space alive and allows it to reach more people who are experiencing this very silent conflict with money. None of this is about empty numbers. It's about building a community of ordinary people trying to understand why they work so hard, do everything right, and still feel like they're always starting from scratch. When you comment, like, or subscribe, you're not just supporting the channel, you're reinforcing that this kind of conversation matters. And from here, we need to delve even deeper, because this silent trap doesn't just explain the problem, it helps us understand why intelligent people remain financially trapped even when they're working harder than ever. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because perhaps the greatest hidden truth of this invisible game is precisely this. Intelligent people remain financially trapped not because of a lack of ability, but because they are playing with a brain that wasn't designed for this type of decision. This sounds uncomfortable, I know, but it's liberating when you understand it. It's not about IQ, degrees, expensive courses, or working to exhaustion. There are extremely competent, respected people who solve complex problems every day, and yet they feel that their money never grows along with them. The mistake lies in believing that effort solves everything. Effort solves visible problems. But what we're talking about here happens behind the scenes. In the realm of mindset and automatic behavior, the human brain was shaped to survive in the short term, to react quickly, seek immediate comfort, and avoid pain now. But the financial game demands exactly the opposite: patience, delayed gratification, cold decisions in a world that constantly pressures for emotional responses. That's when seemingly harmless habits begin to sabotage the long term. Decisions made on autopilot, repeated because it's always been done this way, because everyone does it, because it seems reasonable. Buying peace of mind today in exchange for a tighter future. Trading the feeling of immediate control for a false sense of security. None of this seems like a mistake when it happens in isolation. The real impact only appears later, when the journey is already well underway and the feeling of stagnation begins to bother you. There's an important revelation here. Intelligence helps you earn money, but it doesn't guarantee you'll know how to manage it. Because managing money is less about pure logic and more about behavior, about how you react to fear, desire, comparison, urgency. And the brain, when left unchecked, always chooses what hurts less now, even if it costs much more later. That's the silent trap that keeps so many capable people going in circles. And perhaps you recognize this in yourself, not as a failure, but as a pattern. Working harder when money is tight, instead of questioning the decisions that led to that point. Celebrating small increases in income with new automatic expenses. Postponing difficult choices because they generate immediate discomfort. All of this is part of a mental system that seeks quick relief, not transformation. The invisible game takes advantage of this. It doesn't demand that you be irresponsible. On the contrary, it feeds on people who are overly responsible with the present and careless, without realizing it, with the future. And while you believe you are being prudent, time is silently taking its toll. That's why so many people feel they are always busy, always trying, always adjusting, but rarely moving forward. When you begin to see this pattern, something changes in the way you look at your own decisions. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. You start to realize that many choices are not neutral, even when they seem small. They carry accumulated impact. They shape the direction of your journey without asking permission. And before we continue, tell me one thing in the comments. Write "This makes sense to me" if you feel that this pattern describes, on some level, your own experience. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where the revelations start to become practical and a little uncomfortable. Not because they involve major mistakes, but precisely because they speak of decisions that are too harmless to be questioned. They are everyday choices, almost automatic, that seem normal, responsible, even praiseworthy. The problem is the accumulated impact they carry behind the scenes of your journey. Trading time for unlimited money is a good example of this. Working longer hours is often seen as a virtue, a sign of commitment, of a strong mindset, and, for a while, it even works. The risk arises when this becomes the only strategy, when every financial solution involves sacrificing more time, more energy, more presence. Without realizing it, you create an invisible ceiling. Money only comes in if you are there, active, available. Any pause becomes a threat. The future becomes hostage to the present. Another common decision is to raise your standard of living whenever your income increases, not as an extravagance, but as a fair adjustment. A little more comfort here, an upgrade there, because after all, you worked for it. In isolation, nothing seems wrong. But when your standard of living rises along with your income, the feeling of progress disappears. You earn more, but you still feel the same tightness. The hidden truth is that the invisible game loves this kind of movement, progress that doesn't translate into freedom. There's also the choice to avoid immediate financial discomfort, even if it costs the future, to pay in installments so as not to feel it now, to postpone difficult decisions to maintain tranquility in the moment, to opt for the emotionally easier path, not the most strategic one. The brain appreciates it in the short term because it was made for that, but the impact appears later, silently, when the bill arrives without warning. And perhaps one of the most subtle decisions is making choices based on status, not strategy. Not out of explicit vanity, but out of comparison. Because it seems like everyone does it. Because nobody wants to feel left behind. The problem is that status buys momentary acceptance, not long-term building. It consumes resources that could be working in your favor while delivering only the feeling of belonging. Notice how none of this sounds like a serious mistake? That's the point. The focus here isn't judgment, it's awareness. Because the invisible game isn't won by grand heroic moves, but by what you learn to avoid. Avoiding automatic decisions, avoiding promises of immediate relief, avoiding choices that seem small but shape the entire direction of your journey. When you start to see these decisions more clearly, something changes in your mindset. You begin to observe the impact before the impulse. You start to question what is normal. And this transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the details, in the care, in the silent strategy that no one sees, but that makes all the difference over time. Before moving on, write in the comments, does this make sense to me? If any of these decisions have been part of your story. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after seeing the pitfalls and recognizing the patterns that silently impoverish us, the question that really matters arises. What changes when ordinary people start playing a different game? And the answer is usually surprising, because it doesn't involve extreme courage, strokes of luck, or outlandish decisions. The turning point happens when the mindset changes and the rules become different, less noisy, more consistent, almost invisible to those looking from the outside. Those who start multiplying money don't become fearless overnight. In fact, often the opposite happens. These people become more cautious, more strategic, more aware of the future impact of each decision. They understand that true power lies in choosing today what their future self will appreciate, even when it doesn't bring immediate applause. This is a silent transformation, done behind the scenes, far from comparisons and status. One of the first changes is creating emotional distance from consumption. Not because consumption is wrong, but because emotion is often a terrible financial advisor. By separating desire from decision, these people gain clarity. They learn to observe impulse without automatically obeying it. This space between feeling and acting seems small, but it carries a huge impact throughout the journey. That's where the game starts to change. Another important revelation is the shift from urgency to consistency. The world rewards those who react quickly, but money grows with those who remain steadfast. Instead of seeking shortcuts or immediate results, those who play differently accept the monotony of gradual progress. There's no spectacle in that, just repeated decisions made with intention. This choice changes everything because it removes the pressure of the now and returns the focus to the process. And perhaps the most profound change is learning to make money work for you before working harder. This doesn't mean stopping the effort, but stopping believing that effort is the only possible currency. Gradually, these people build structures, habits, and choices that allow time to cease being the only fuel. It's a shift in mindset, less wear and tear, more strategy, less haste, more direction. None of this happens with a major, landmark event. The turning point doesn't come as a shock, but as a sequence of more conscious decisions. That's why it seems accessible, because it is. Ordinary people do this every day, away from the spotlight, simply choosing to play by rules that prioritize impact, not appearance. When you realize this real possibility, something ignites, not as an empty promise, but as understanding. You begin to see that the invisible game is not unbeatable. It only requires you to stop reacting and start choosing. And this choice, repeated with intention, has the power to completely change the direction of your journey. Before continuing, write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," if this turning point has started to make sense to you. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after seeing the shift in mindset and understanding that ordinary people can play by different rules, something even more delicate arises. What is, in fact, the first move outside the invisible game? And here, it's worth being honest from the start. Nobody changes the game overnight. There's no dramatic rupture, no epic decision that solves everything at once. What exists is a silent moment when you realize that continuing the same way costs more than changing. This first step isn't financial, it's mental. It's when you start observing your own decisions more closely, almost like someone watching their own routine from the outside. You begin to notice patterns, choices that repeat themselves, justifications that always appear, and most importantly, decisions that were never truly questioned, simply inherited as normal. This awareness is, in itself, a profound transformation, even if nothing changes immediately on the outside. The hidden truth is that clarity always comes before results. Before any numbers improve, something needs to be reorganized internally. The way you think about time, money, comfort, risk. The invisible game loses its power when you stop reacting automatically and start deciding intentionally. It's not about cutting everything off, radicalizing, or living in constant deprivation. It's about understanding the impact of each choice, even those that seem too small to matter. This first step also requires emotional patience, because in the beginning, you don't see clear rewards. On the contrary, sometimes it seems like you're giving up something without receiving anything in return. And that's exactly where many people give up. Not because the strategy doesn't work, but because the brain is still looking for immediate signs of validation. But the different game works at a different pace. It rewards consistency, not haste. By making this conscious move, you begin to feel something curious. Less anxiety in some areas, more discomfort in others. Discomfort is a good sign. It shows that you've gotten out of autopilot, that certain decisions, previously invisible, now demand your attention. And this changes the entire journey because you start choosing knowing what you're doing and not just repeating what has always been done. There are no shortcuts here, no easy promises. What exists is a clearer path, a process in which every decision takes on meaning. And when that happens, even small changes begin to generate cumulative impact. Not spectacularly, but consistently, almost silently, in a way that the invisible game never taught you. Perhaps at this moment, the most important question is not, "What should I do now?" but "What decision have I been repeating for years without ever stopping to question it?" This question keeps echoing because it points directly to each person's personal turning point. And it is from this point that the journey begins to take a different direction, opening up space to understand how to sustain this new game over time. Before moving on, write in the comments, "Does this make sense to me?" If this thought has been nagging at you, if you've made it this far, it's because something in this conversation resonated with you. Not as an empty promise, but as a genuine reflection, the kind that lingers long after the video ends. And that's precisely why it's worth sticking around. Subscribing to the channel is a simple way of saying that this type of content helps you better understand your own decisions, question what seems too normal, and continue on this journey with more clarity. If you want, leave a comment saying, "This message was for me." It's not just about marking your presence. It's a way to show that you made it to the end and that this conversation affected you in some way. And if at any point you felt supported, understood, helps reinforce that connection and gets this type of content to more people who are also trying to get out of autopilot. Now, there's a video over here that perfectly complements this topic, delves deeper into this reflection, and continues this conversation from where we left off. Click there and follow along, because this journey becomes even clearer when you connect the pieces.